Hey, what's up again, my beautiful and divine people? Coming back now with part two of my story. I stopped on my earlier post. Basically, I'm going to start now with New York Presbyterian Hospital. I left Jersey City Medical Center against their advice. I wound up getting blood clots in both of my lungs and both of my legs because they didn't have a cancer center. So basically, I was just in bed recovering from the surgery, the removal of the tumor, the ostomy bag that I received, and I was already sick before that for a couple months, so I really didn't have too much strength. So I was in bed for quite some time, and that's how I wound up developing the blood clots. So we decided to go to New York Presbyterian Hospital, and I waited till they gave me the medication, and I believe I had like a 2 to 3 hour window before the medication wears off for the blood clots. So my sister and her boyfriend and my fiance, who is my wife now, she was my fiance at the time, we all drove to New York Presbyterian from New Jersey. I had to stay in the waiting room there for 36 hours. It was so busy in there. 36 hours, but they started working on me while I was in the waiting room, running tests, checking my blood, making sure the blood clots were okay. So basically, I was getting treatment in the emergency room on a cot. And then after about 3 or 4, no, I'm sorry, I'm lying, maybe a day and a half, I finally got my room. And basically, I was very big and swollen because I wasn't able to move. And that's what lymphoma does as well. It makes you swell up. So I was really big, couldn't get around much, and finally I started getting chemotherapy at New York Presbyterian. And I have to tell you, it was amazing. From the first time I received chemo, I started shrinking and I started feeling better actually. And I had an awesome physical therapy team there. And basically, they were very impressed with how I was handling everything mentally and physically. And what they suggested to me, the way that this worked was I would go to New York Presbyterian for 5 days straight and get 5 straight days of chemotherapy, and then go home for 16 days and come back to New York Presbyterian. And I had to do that for 5 cycles. And I can't remember the name of the shot now, but my wife would actually have to give me a shot on the second day to help to boost my immune system back up. Because, man, it was pretty draining. But I have to say, I always made sure I kept a positive attitude. I always showed love to my nurses, to the doctors. And again, they did the same for me. And it was just an amazing back and forth of them telling me I'm going to make it because of my attitude, and me having that attitude because they're telling me I'm going to make it. And it was just amazing. I'm telling you, I don't look at it as a bad situation at all. It enlightened me and changed me into the person who I am now, and I'm very, very happy with that person. So the physical therapist suggested that when I go home for them 16 days, as soon as I feel a little bit of strength, she gave me, it was a she initially, they gave me some very light dumbbells, 2.5 pounds. And I would lift those with my arms, over my shoulders, on my chest. And I would do that at least 4 of the 16 days that I was home. Nothing crazy, but just something to keep my strength up. I would go for walks around the corner. I did everything that I can. Because again, you can't project yourself doing something and not take the necessary steps. That's part of it. I can't just say, hey, I'm going to beat this and I'm going to be okay, and lay in bed and that happens. You have to take the steps that are necessary. And I did take the steps that were necessary. I had a beautiful doctor, Dr. Rutherford. She was so awesome. I went through so many hard times there. Actually, the first 4 times that I went, piece of cake. I would get the chemo, go home. They would even speed up the bags. One bag was supposed to last 24 hours. They would knock it down after the third one because of the way I was responding to it to 18 hours. just so I could get out of there a little bit earlier. On the 5th day, I was able to leave a little earlier than I should have, which was, again, awesome and a blessing. The one time that was kind of rough, I picked up a really bad infection, because you're susceptible to that when you're getting chemo. And it was so bad, I have what they call a fistula. And basically, my insides crossed. So one day, I actually had feces come out of my penis. Yes, I'm sorry. It was crazy. Craziest thing I've ever saw. Craziest thing I ever felt. Craziest thing I ever experienced. And because I was fresh off chemo, they were very reluctant to go in and switch it back. So I basically had 3 surgeries on my stomach. The initial surgery to remove the tumor and give me my ostomy bag. Then I had to be opened up again to reverse the fistula, or fix the fistula. And I'm sorry, but this is it here. This is where the ostomy bag was. This is where they cut me the 3 times. And this is where there was some kind of tube. I'm not quite sure what the tube was for. Sorry if that was too naked. I apologize. But that's what it was. That was the most difficult time. I finally talked them into doing the operation. I told them, listen, I don't care. I'm willing to take the risk. I can't go on like this though. It was so painful. I had a catheter that I had to keep on for about a month. That was very uncomfortable too. But my doctors kept on promising me that if I just stay strong and get through this, I would be okay. And that is eventually what happened. And again, with them putting those words in my head, and I already had a strong belief as well, it was just a beautiful thing. They were able to fix my fistula. I went back home, went for my last 2 sessions, and that's when they told me that they think I should get a stem cell transplant, because my immune system took such a pounding and a beating through everything that they wanted me to come back. And the crazy thing is, I was feeling so good. At this point, I was back to myself, feeling good. I had my bag, but I was still working out, doing exercises, walking around, going out to the movies, to dinner. I was doing everything. I was feeling really good because I was officially done with the cancer. I was done with my regime and everything. But I had to start over 2 months getting stem cell. And that was its own mission and own story. And I don't want to bore you too much, so I'm going to stop here. And my next video, I will get into the stem cell part. And I had to switch doctors because, my first doctor, Rutherford, she was just for the cancer. And now I'm taking on a new doctor for the stem cell, was awesome as well. All of them were just so awesome. I know I told you guys as well, I had cancer cells in my brain and in my spine. So I actually had a port in my head where they would have to give me chemo. This was a big bump. They removed it and put it down. But they would have to give me chemo with basically a shot, because chemo travels through the blood. So it couldn't get to my spine and in my brain cells. And I had cancer cells in my brain and in my spine. And the only way to get to them was with the port. So 2 times a week, once a week, I would get the shot here of chemotherapy. I had the option of not getting this in my head and getting the shot twice a week in my back and my spine, but they said that was pretty risky. Even though it sounds crazy getting a hole in your head, but getting that in my spine twice a week was actually more risky because of the nerves and everything that's there. So I went with the option for this. It was something I had to sleep on, and that's the option I went with. But the beautiful thing is, they're all gone. I even had a PICC line in my arm. It was basically where they would just have to plug the chemo into me, because that's how chemo comes through IV. So instead of sticking me all the time, I had 2 ports, 2 holes ready to go. That is reversed as well, as you can see. So, just remember, when you're going through difficult times, there is beauty waiting for you. But if you resist and fight and get yourself out of that mind state while the difficult times are there, you're never going to see the good times. Everything goes through times that look bad. You know, even our seasons. Some of our seasons are rainy and dark and wet and kind of depressing. But what comes afterwards? Beauty, beautiful weather, spring. And that's life. You know, sometimes you just have to deal with things that seem bad, and eventually they would turn beautiful. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. I love you. I'll see you in the next video.